worry so much about using humor and bombing. That's what people are so afraid of. Oh, it's not going to go over. If you truly think it's funny, you'll sell it. People will make time for something that they think it's going to be fun or different or not a time suck or not a boring. When I talk about humor in business, I'm not talking about joke like a comedian either. I'm talking about just finding the humor in the situation. We are walking around like zombies sometimes. We're not paying attention to what's around us. Start looking. There are ironies, there are disconnects, there are funny things all around us that we're just not paying attention to. The punchline, pretty famous club, right above the door, someone has carved, make them come to you. It means command the audience. Bring them to you. Don't go, I hope I'm funny, I hope everyone laughs. If you think it's funny, bring them to you.
I feel like there's such a lack of humor when it comes to marketing and when it comes to business and just having fun. So I'm super excited to talk about how you help businesses do this. But first, let's get a real quick origin story. How did you get to what you're doing today? And it sounds like you've lived the life of a comedian, and those are always fun to examine. So share a little bit of that with us.
Yeah, I did start actually out of college. I always wanted to be a comedian, but I didn't have anybody in entertainment in my family. And I remember graduating from college and going to that big dinner with my family and thinking, now is not the time to tell my parents I want to be a comedian. So I didn't do that. I went into marketing for about a dozen or so years and finally took the plunge, tried it, liked it, kind of got more into stand-up comedy, working all the clubs around the country, driving 50, 60,000 miles a year, stumbled into corporate comedy, doing shows for corporations, and then sort of into keynote speaking, which is a profession I didn't even know existed. I didn't know what a keynote speaker was. And I now go out and I talk about using humor in business. And I do it for whatever kind of group it is, whether it's healthcare or financial, because every kind of business can use humor, even if it's personal life, professional life, even if it's not marketing, just in your day-to-day life. We can use it and people kind of wait for permission. It's like, oh, I don't know if I can use it. I'm a small business. Should we? I'm not a comedian, and I say, why not?
Yeah, right. Well, why not? And why not give it a try? Or, even if something flops, that's the beauty about marketing is if a campaign flops, make another one.
Right. And that's the thing that people are so worried about using humor. First of all, use your common sense, stay away from the hot topics, sex, drugs, rock and roll, politics, stuff like that. If it's in business anyway, if you want to be a comedian on stage and do that stuff, do whatever your brand you want. But marketing, stay away from, use your common sense, but don't worry so much about using humor and bombing. That's what people are so afraid of. Oh, it's not going to go over. If you truly think it's funny, you'll sell it and you'll feel good doing it. And in business, if you're using humor in business, a lot of people don't get mad at you if it's not funny, if you say something that, isn't killer laughter. And you're not really going for killer comedian laughs anyway in business. People are usually appreciative that you're trying to use some humor. And then when you get into marketing, we're competing with so much, if you don't try to stand out with something, even if it's silly humor, something, if it makes you laugh, it makes other people laugh, you'll bring them on board and you'll sell it and have fun doing it.
I feel like there's only a few, I'm thinking like enterprise level, like the Progressive commercials or Geico, they're just known for their humor. But it feels like beyond these ones that it's just part of their ethos, it feels like there's such a lack of humor being used everywhere. And do you attribute that? Do you think, like you said, the fear of bombing or the fear of overstepping some imaginary bound? Why use it?
I think, well, when you get into big companies, and of course, the Super Bowl ads are $10 billion for 10 seconds or something. People try to do humor with those, and a lot of it works pretty good. But outside of those ads, I think people there's so many levels and layers of other people saying, oh, we can't do that, or we can't do that. Small business, if you're in the command post, you can do that, and try it. Like I said, people aren't going to get mad at you as long as it's appropriate and on brand for you. They at least appreciate that you're trying to use a little bit of humor. So yeah, like you said, move on. If one thing doesn't work, move on. But those ads you've mentioned are hilarious. And Progressive, we'll stop and, oh, wait, I'm not going to speed past this. I want to watch this, Humor is just such a good connector with people. And it's a great way to be memorable, make people want to hear your message. What is it, commercials you have to marketing, they say you got to run something past people 4 times before they even acknowledge it, and 7 or 8 times before they even buy anything. Why not make it fun?
Yeah.
Why not make it something they want to see instead of get annoyed and say, it's the 5th time I've seen this commercial and I don't, I'm not buying that product.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. This is pertinent. Just the other day, I saw a new Progressive commercial where Progressive can't stop you from becoming your parents. And they got the guy calling out for coffee.
Yeah.
He's calling out
Yeah.
Jan. I don't know if you've seen
I
that
did. I
commercial,
did.
but it's the Jan. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I have to drop that one. Yeah, maybe Jan. I don't know.
And I have to say, I
uh,
haven't used Progressive, but I still watch the commercials. We're talking about it right here. And that's what good
yeah.
humor gets people to do, is talk about it, even though it might not be
Hmm.
appropriate. But the more they talk, the more somebody's going to say, oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
actually need to use that service.
Right. And isn't that funny that I guess I'm a perfect example. I bought a new house early this year and I needed homeowners insurance. And I was like, you know what? I see those Progressive commercials all the time. Why don't I just call them and see what they can give me? They ended up giving me the best
Hey,
quotes. And now I have Progressive. But I spent, the last 8 years, probably 10 years watching Progressive commercials and never acting on them.
yeah.
But they kept my attention and they made me laugh and they were on my brain when I needed homeowners insurance. And here we
And they
are.
connected so
It
well with
works.
it. Humor, just if you find the right humor for your product or service, it just makes that instant connection and people see themselves. And you're the new homeowner going, I don't want to be my parents. Oh, I'm going to buy a house. Maybe I'll turn into them. So, there's
Yeah.
so many good advantages. And I think people are, like I said, are just waiting for permission. Oh, we've got to have somebody tell us that we're not comedians. We need someone to say, okay, go ahead and do it. So I'm going to give everyone permission now. Go out and try to use a little bit of humor.
So, if you're a small business owner and you've got an inkling to do something humorous with your marketing, what type of steps do you take? Do you just kind of let it flow? Do you call Jan? Like, what? How
You can
do
call
I
me.
guess I think a lot of business owners might be like, how do I be funny?
Well, if you want to get a message out there, I've got a lot of tips on how to find humor. For instance, what you're really trying to do is say something without saying it. Make it analogies are a very fast way to find humor. You could walk in a room and say, oh, this is cold, or start your speech off with, it's cold. But, if you compare it to, this is, say it without saying it. This is, this room feels like my ex-spouse or something, it's cold. You can say the message without saying it. So make a list of, what do people think of your product? What are some fun things? Pull out the irony. What are the disconnects? What are the things, people think when they think about your product? And what are a good example, I guess, when I go into a meeting, into a conference, I start out with a joke about people's name tags. They always have name tags on their badge. And I start out with saying, I read off a list of some of the boring things that they're sitting through. And I say, oh, it's a good thing you're all wearing name bags. No one's going to sneak into this. It gets huge laugh because it connects instantly. They're like, oh, she gets us. We're going to be sitting through legislative sessions and, healthcare updates and that sort of thing. And she gets us. So making showing a little bit of irony, showing a little bit of say it without saying it are two really fast, easy ways to use humor.
Okay. So, what are the types of companies that you work with? Are they mostly smaller businesses? Or
I
are
do a
they
lot of
mid-level? Are they enterprise?
I do a lot of keynotes for association groups. They could be healthcare, they could be finance. I've spoken to 4 of the Federal Reserve banks, bank examiners.
Oh,
Yeah,
oof, talk about needing some humor.
they were great. As I was walking on stage, the client pulls me over and is like, these are bank examiners. They never laugh. And they were just great because people are realizing they need to use a little bit more humor in their business. So I've spoken
Yeah,
to, education groups. I have written for a lot of different, everything from wart removal cream companies to one group was,
that must have been a fun one.
yeah, that was
That
fun. I
lends
got some
itself to
really good
comedy a
lines on
little
that.
bit.
I've punched up realtors, newsletters. I've sold jokes to the Tonight shows and, some of the late night TV, freelance, that sort of thing. I sold, gosh, you name it, lots of different businesses. So, because, people like to add humor, they don't necessarily know how.
Right. So do they come to you and say, hey, here's our concept or here's our business, here's our details. Can you help make us funny? Can you write us
Yeah,
funny?
they'll
Is
come and
that
say,
kind of
here's a,
okay?
for example, there was a group that was trying to get their product on Southwest Airlines a couple of years ago. And actually I flew Southwest recently and the product was on there. So I was like, oh, good. Maybe I helped. But they were
It
doing a
worked.
presentation to Southwest. And so they said, hey, here's our product. Can you have write some humor for our slide presentation for them? So I did that. So fun things like that, just kind of beef it
Yeah.
up. And that's another thing, companies, when you go to pitch something, you've got these boring slides. You can you don't just have to add humor in your marketing, but you can put a little bit in your presentations if you're trying to win some business, or your website where the bios or the about us page, they get kind of long-winded. Nobody wants to read about we started in 1862. Add some
Hmm.
humor in there. Show people that your company has a little bit of a funny bone, or yourself. In your bio, I was started in high school and blah. Put something fun into it, and people will kind of remember you and go, oh, this might be somebody I'd like to network with.
Yeah, I did that on my LinkedIn page, on my profile. My first job out of college, I was only there 6 months and was basically shown the door because I was so bad at my job. And I basically wrote a little blurb about how bad I was at that job. And it was like, do not ever hire me for this job type of thing. And it's the like most commented thing on when people check out my LinkedIn, like, did you actually put that on your LinkedIn? I'm like, yeah, it's
I
hilarious. I was
know.
so bad at it.
I had a funny quotes one time I put on the back of my book cover. This guy said he laughed so hard he almost wrecked his truck. I said, that great. That's a great testimonial. You heard me on the
Yeah,
radio. So, but yeah,
I love that.
emails. I mean, easy ways you can put fun or stuff in the subject line. Take we have top 10 lists, or what do you call a penny saved is a penny earned? What is it? What's that? What do you call those?
Oh,
It's on the tip of my tongue.
not an
Idiom.
idiom,
Yes, an
a
idiom. Yeah. Yeah,
idiom.
you can
Yeah,
change
yeah.
those
Okay.
around really fast because people are used to seeing things like good news, bad news about our product. Good news, top things. It doesn't have to be a top 10 list. Top things. Just to start with something easy, small like that, or change an idiom around. A penny saved is a penny earned. Unless you go to our competitor, then you'll lose all your pennies. Or I don't know, something, you have something fun like that. Change those around people. They
Yeah.
catch people's attention. They make you kind of want to read it a little bit. I think years ago, Jay Leno used to have funny headlines every Monday. And it would be real
Mhm.
headlines. It'd be like, people without teeth don't go to dentist or something stupid like that. But it makes you go, I want to read that article, right? So that's kind of what you want to
Yeah.
do, is read that article or get them to read, listen, or sit through something or whatever it is, your presentation or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I think this applies doubly to whether you're an employee or a business owner or just you communicate with people in general. When you do the mundane things, you said like an email, or if you make a lot of phone calls or something, if you have a way to spice it up
Yeah,
and inject a little bit of humor, I think it probably what goes unnoticed is you bring joy to other people's day, right?
yeah,
Like you're not only you making yourself, a little bit more out there and having fun, but you're bringing it to others, right?
right.
It's a win-win.
People people will make time for something that they think is going to be fun or different or not a time suck or not a boring. They're gonna make time for it if it sounds fun. And
Hmm.
so humor is one of those things that, I might read this. I love your email subject line. I had one client, they were trying to figure out an email subject line, and I said that getting people to respond to a survey. How many surveys do we get every day? And she sent it out. We came up with a line, the subject line, we don't want your opinion. Well, and it was a membership thing. And of course, everyone in the membership, well, we're going to give you our opinion. They opened it up and took the survey.
Yeah.
So, it's fun things like that. Just flip things around. Sort of counterintuitive is another way to find the humor and stuff. Make a counterintuitive sentence like cats are better than kids or whatever you want to do, and then prove it. Why are cats better than kids? They clean
Hmm.
themselves. They don't talk back. They're better than kids. So I just proved that. So make a
There
strong,
you go.
bold statement. And those are very simple ways you could just add a little bit of humor, and people know you have a funny bone, and they might want to do business with you.
Yeah. Do you do like physical ad writing for companies if they need a commercial or
I have
like
done a little
advertorial
of
or
that,
anything
and
like
I've done
that?
a few, like I mentioned, a realtor. I've done sales letters or welcome letters. I've done oh gosh, I should have made a list. I've written for syndicated cartoon strips, which is fun. The hardest writing, I have to say, the hardest is, what do you think that would be the hardest? Television? No.
No. Radio?
No.
No.
I wrote for a radio
No.
prep service for years. I wrote 15 jokes a day for hundreds of stations. The radio guys come in the morning, they don't have time to do any research. It's 4 in the morning. So they subscribe to a prep service, and we send them, 20 pages of showbiz sex, wacky criminals, and I would write a lot of his jokes. So I'd be driving around the country hearing my jokes on the radio. A friend of mine
Ah.
came up to me once. She's like, Jan, I heard the best top 10 list on the radio here in LA today. And I said, well, do you want me to read it to you? Because it's on my computer. I wrote it.
Yeah.
But no, the hardest writing is greeting cards, because you've
Ah.
got a Mother's Day card for a mother with any age kids, any number of kids, and the mother could be any age, or the father. So they don't want hard hitting comedy, and you really have to be sort of general. And they're the hardest I found to write. Greeting
Wow.
cards.
Okay. So do you do a lot of that?
I don't have much time anymore. I used to write greeting cards for the subsidiary of Hallmark and one other group I did some for, but it's the hardest stuff because you really have to be general and general yet specific. They want a Mother's Day card, but
Right.
you don't know what the age of mother or the kids, and they want to appeal to everybody. So
Yeah. Well, so from a business standpoint, what does it look like in terms of? I'm sure your network is so large now that you have solid referrals, and but how do you manage the business coming in? And I'm also curious, what do you charge for? Depending on what, I'm sure it's all project based. How do you decide what to charge for something like a top 10 list that gets syndicated on a huge show? How do you charge for
Yeah,
that?
it really is on a project base. Like the late nights had a set what they would pay for per joke. Back when I was doing it, the late night were like $150 a joke. So, it's really what does the person or the company want is when I figure out what to charge them, and we go from there. For me, it's such a fun release because I learn about all these different companies with the writing, with the speaking. Most people get into a profession, they stay in one lane. They're healthcare or they're education, and they don't get to hear all about all the other different professions out there. And I do, so it's fun. And every profession can have some kind of humor. Every industry can have some kind of, funeral directors are the funniest. They have a really good sense of humor, and they have a really tough business, but they kind of have to have
Yeah.
that sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
And so every business can. You just, use a few rules, common sense, like I said. Don't make fun of a group you're not a member of. If you're bald, you can have fun with bald. If you're tall, you can joke with tall. If you're not, don't. Don't do obvious humor or humor that's kind of really easy. For example, I did a show for the blind merchants. I was the only sighted person in the room, and they had my contract no blind jokes because they had a great sense of humor, but they said, we have heard them all. And they have. So you don't want to
Yeah.
do the general stuff, and you don't want to do the mean humor. It's easy to mean spirited stuff, or easy cheap shots are certainly going to get a laugh sometime, but stay away from that. I mean, I did an event one
Mm-hmm.
time. It was 4,400 people, and they ran out of dinner for 1,500. And it was plated. It wasn't like a buffet or anything. So they miscounted, and it was their employee appreciation banquet. And yeah, I know. And I go on stage, and of course, I want to pull the curtain back and go, "Hey, I found him." Don't do that. It would have killed. I knew it would have killed. But the meeting planner was back behind, in the green room crying because she was about to get in a lot of trouble. So use your
Yeah.
common sense, be nice. I always say be nice in business. You really want to get people, you want to appeal to everybody, as many people as you can in your lane of what you're trying to sell or market.
Yeah. When you're working with clients, how do you get them over that hump of the fear of being funny or the fear of the flop? Do you have tricks of the trade to help you get over that, or is it like a just do it type
It
of
is a
thing?
just do it. And it's really, do you ride motorcycles by any chance? I do. Do you?
I do not. I'm terrified of them because like I'll get the speed wobbles once and I'm a dead man. And my wife really wants to ride on a motorcycle. I'm like, you're gonna have to go find that other guy to ride on a motorcycle.
I'm terrified of them on the LA freeways. I don't do that, but I did a couple times, and that's why I'm terrified of them. But no, in motorcycles, wherever you're focusing on, you're gonna hit. If you're looking at the ground and scared, you're gonna be on the ground. That's the same with humor. If you're gonna go walking around, oh my gosh, I hope this hits. I hope this works. I hope I don't bomb. You're just putting that out there, and you're focusing on that instead of how much fun it's going to be and how much your clients are going to enjoy it. The Punchline, Atlanta, was a pretty famous club. I think Ellen DeGeneres and a bunch of people have started there. Is you're in the green room walking out onto the stage, right above the door, someone has carved in the door, make them come to you. Means command the audience, bring them to you. Don't go, I hope I'm funny, I hope everyone laughs. Bring them to you. And that's what you really want to do with humor. If you think it's funny, sell it. Bring them to you. So
Do you recommend that businesses kind of find like a recurring theme that they can joke around, or do you find that they end up shotgunning an approach with it and there's really no cohesion? I guess how do
uh,
you make sure there's cohesion with the messaging that they're bringing while injecting the humor?
well, I this the humor I've written for businesses is usually like a one and done deal. They have a specific thing they're trying to promote or trying to do, or it's their annual letter to their shareholders or something. That probably wouldn't be funny, but the sort of that sort of thing. So, but either or, I mean, put some stuff out there if it's in along with your brand, and you can have and you want to add some humor to it. You can do a whole campaign on it, or you could just put some out there. And I don't know how people do their ads, individual, their marketing message. And start small. There's so many ways to put humor. Just start small. Pick up one or two ideas and incorporate a little bit of humor. You know, if you want to put a fun top list in there, or, you know, what do we call those word idioms? But
Yeah.
change around an idiom. Just start small and get your feet wet a little bit. Don't jump into a 10-month campaign and it's going to be funny and it's going to joke because, you know, you want to get your feet wet, feel comfortable with it first. And if you're selling it and you're doing the humor that's on brand for you, you'll feel it and you'll enjoy it and you'll want to do more of it. And people will want to see more
Yeah.
of it, you know?
Well, I think there's a huge opportunity in email as well. You know, a lot of businesses, all businesses should have some form of a newsletter, right? Some sort of communication that they have with past
Yeah.
buyers. And I think that's a perfect opportunity to inject your personality and your humor is through these emails where you might not get many replies at all unless you're selling something through your emails or but it helps land with the people who read your emails and your customers
Right.
that you have a sense of humor and you're trying to relate your product to them through humor and you're building that connection, right?
Right. And you know, you can start even smaller than coming up with your own humor. There's a lot of cartoons that you can purchase the rights to or whatever to include a cartoon. Just lets people know, hey, we got a sense of humor here. You know, if you want to just start something really small and to kind of get people warmed up to humor, you know, you see people that someone who has a funny cartoon or something in their byline, they're open to humor. It really is a great instant connector with clients, coworkers, potential clients, just to get that aha moment when someone connects with the humor that you use. And when I talk about humor in business, I'm not talking about joke like a comedian either. I'm talking about just finding the humor in the situation, pulling out this irony here and using a little bit. It's not, you're not going to make people fall out of their chair laughing. You're just going to get them the aha moment, funny, move on. You could, but
Right.
I think people are afraid that if it's not like, oh my gosh, like the comedian I saw at the comedy club last night, you know, if it's not like that kind of funny, I don't want to do it. And no, you know, you're not going to be that kind of funny in front of an email or something like that in business.
How do you help people find the humor around them? Is it just keeping your eyes open?
Yeah,
Are there specific things that you look for as a comedian to kind of help you? Because it's all content,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You got to have content in order to make the humor with it. So how do you find that?
Great question, because we are walking around like zombies sometimes. We're not paying attention to what's around us. Start looking. There are ironies, there are disconnects, there are funny things all around us that we're just not paying attention to. I did an event for a group and the speaker right ahead of me was speaking on networking, and the title of his talk was, it was Keith Ferrazzi. The title of his talk was Never Eat Lunch Alone. Right on the agenda right after him was lunch on your own. People aren't paying attention. You know, I mean, you just see that. I showed up at an event one time and their little giveaway at the registration table was a grooming kit. We go to an event, we kind of feel like we look good, right? Then someone hands you a grooming kit.
Yeah.
So I got on stage and said, you know, I hope I'm not the only one who was handed a grooming kit when I arrived. So have some fun, but nobody pays attention because we're not thinking about it. One group was
Yeah.
giving out the solar powered flashlights. I'm like, well, these are going to help a lot as long as it's, you know, sunny. So, but we don't think of this stuff because we're not
Yeah.
thinking that way. And comedians, we just know where to look. I look at the room. I look at what's the temperature, what's the audience, what the decorations on the table, what's the giveaway, what's happening on the agenda, what's the other topics on the agenda. So start looking around, and you can probably start making lists. And after a while, it'll just kind of jump out at you like it does with comedians because we've done it so long.
Yeah. It's just being observational,
Yeah,
right? And
being
then drawing
observational,
connections.
making lists. I mean, I just make tons of lists of what's connected to your product. What do you want to say about your product? How can you say that without saying that, you know? And then we come up
Hmm.
with the analogies and the idioms and all. I'm gonna
Yeah. Those
stamp that
idioms, those
word on my
pesky
brain now.
idioms. Yeah. Is there a connection between humor and storytelling and being able to use both of these in business?
There is, and I think a lot of people want you to do storytelling. I'm not a storyteller type comedian. I can write a story with humor in it, but I feel like for me, my comedy was always set up punch. You know, you don't like that joke, you like this joke, 3 or 4 jokes a minute. So holding someone's attention, it's got to be a good story. But certainly, you can use storytelling with some humor. It's got to be a good ending because you've built it up. you know, but having humor along the way, certainly. And you could tell, and like I said, in your website and, you know, about our company, That's a great place to add some storytelling. Or your bio, you could say, yeah, John played football in college, well, who cares? But, John played football in college, but after being tackled by 300-pound guys, he realized that he'd rather have a career in marketing. You could do something fun like that to let people know about you without making it boring.
It's subtle, but it's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Yeah. When you're doing your keynotes, I don't know if you like do Q&As, but what are some of the questions you get from people that you're speaking to?
Are some of the questions. A lot of it is centered around, well, I'm a little nervous about using humor and because I don't want to offend you know, and again, I go back to don't focus on that and use your common sense and you will not offend and, don't get political. Don't get, about a raunchy story. You may think it's fun with your friends, but that's not for business unless that's your business.
Yeah.
It's not a one rule fits all. I get so what we get a lot of. I get people right after I do like a show in a theater. They'll come up and go, you know what? I'm really funny. I should be a comedian. I'm really funny. And you know why they don't? I know nobody comes up to other people. I'm really good at numbers. I should be an accountant. No, nobody does that. But they always do that to us, and they don't do it because they're afraid of hecklers and they're afraid of bombing, right? Hecklers and
Hmm.
people are shy away from things without even trying it because they have this image that comedians bomb, and you know that's part of and it is part of the learning curve. But it's not, you get good or you get out, so you get over it.
Right. And when you bomb, like if you're injecting humor as a business or a business owner, it's okay to bomb and you're going to, right? Not everything's going to land,
Right, but
but
you're not
it's
going to
but if
bomb like a comic in a comedy show because where everyone's expecting them to
right.
be funny. It just might not hit as funny as you want. Maybe that's where you come in with a little bit of testing if you're going to start, but run it past a few people. Watch though. I learned early on when I started in stand-up comedy, don't run jokes past friends at a party because you're not on stage and that's a bad joke. And we all hate those
Yeah.
people that are always on anyway, right? And you can't get a word in. It's
Yeah.
dumb joking.
How do you measure the effectiveness of humor? Is it just as far as a business goes, is it in the bottom line or do you have a different way of being able to measure the success or failure of it?
I think if you're getting some response, getting opens, getting your emails opened, and maybe links clicked if you're doing an email. I thought it was pretty cool when I saw this product that on Southwest Airlines that I had helped them with their presentation to Southwest a couple years earlier do. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would like to think that some of the humor in the presentation helped sell that to them. Who knows?
For sure.
But so that's sort of is. Sometimes it is hard to gauge, but maybe do it for a bit and then stop doing it and see if people
Yeah.
are like, wait, if we all of a sudden Progressive went back to just telling us about home insurance, you know, they might not get the eyeballs. They
Right.
might still get people, calling them, but they wouldn't get people talking about them like we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's like if you are funny, but then you're not funny, and I mean, you can rotate between the two, but if you end up getting known for it and you stay consistent with it and it's tasteful and, all the above, now you're kind of planting yourself in the brains of your possible buyers,
Oh,
whether they're ready to buy today or in 3 years from now, kind of like me with the home insurance, like the seed was planted long ago and it's the humor that was kind of the anchor.
yeah, and they'll want to meet you. I mean, don't you want to meet Flo from
Yeah.
Progressive? I mean, you want to meet. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
people will be more open to meeting you, and it won't be just oh, I gotta meet the salesperson for this or that. They'll be like, oh, those are pretty good. I want to. So you want to be someone that they want to hang out with for a beer or a cup of coffee or something, and you can do that with
Yeah.
humor. You can make it
Exactly.
it makes you approachable. It's really good. And you can let people know about yourself. I always ask the audience after I do about 10 minutes of stand up, say, okay, what do you know about me from 10 minutes? Look at all the things you can learn from someone and listen to the humor they use and find out what sort of frame of mind. If somebody's really snarky, you know what frame of mind they're in, But they find
Hmm.
out about me. Instead of just going on stage and saying, well, I'm single, I've got no kids, I do jokes about being an aunt. And it's a much more effective way to let people know about me personally.
Yeah, well, and you had mentioned that, helping people inject humor in their presentations. I think in business, there's, multi-million dollar presentations that are being made all the time. And I mean, I don't know about you, but if anyone like comes to me, whether it's like a job application or a presentation, something where it's a very typically formal process, and you kind of know how it's going to go. You know what you're looking for. You might even be lulled into, some sort of just a general lull of what you're doing here. But the minute somebody comes and they do something funny, say something funny, or they relate it to me in a way that makes me like perk up, I mean, that's a total game changer. And humor is such a great way to do that.
Yeah. I did a presentation program for the Gates Foundation for some of their employees. They were in charge of going out and doing presentations, and they were very hesitant. We talked a lot about getting over I know you're the Gates Foundation. You're not going to go out and do joke, 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 but here's some things in your presentation that you can let people know. Have some funny statistics, it's just some funny things. Do the opposite, 100%, 90% of people do this, 10% make something funny up. You can show a little bit of humor, and again, in your bio and that sort of thing. And there is a way to put it in there without losing the professionalism. And that's another comment I get a lot is people are happy that I'm showing them how to use humor, but I'm not showing them how to be a comedian. I'm showing them how to do it professionally.
Yeah. And like you can slide them in even in like statistic lines or something. Like we cleared this revenue, we did this, and we had 14,785,612 smiles that day, or laughs.
Yeah, yeah.
Like something that's kind of outrageous but silly, but fits right into what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing, speaking of outrageous, when you're listening to any comedian, we talk in extremes, right? Somebody isn't 100 years old, they're 1,000 years old. They don't weigh 100 pounds, they weigh 10,000 pounds. So take things to extreme. We look at everything like it's a problem when we ask the question, how would I solve this if I could solve this any way I want? And we come up with extreme solutions. I joke about getting my nephew to quiet down and all these different ways I do it. Or I joke about, I took my sister to the hospital. I figured out the system in the emergency room. The person who was bleeding gets to the top of the list. My sister's at the bottom because she wasn't bleeding at first. And it's a great joke, but I take it to the extremes. Of course I didn't do that to my sister, but we look at everything like it's a problem and we ask the question, how would I solve this if I could solve it any way I want? We come up with these extreme solutions, and that's the humor right there. So you can come up with some fun extremes, to your whatever your client's problem issues are to solve them. Or you could use our company.
Yeah, right. And I think if you're an entrepreneur, these are traits that many of us kind of just have, right? Like entrepreneurs are problem solvers, and we're born and trained to see the problem and discover a solution or provide a solution or build a solution, right? I think it lends very well to humor. And I feel like it's fine. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, and the majority of them have a great sense of humor. Now that I think about it, I've never really thought about that, but it is true.
Yeah, we got to do something. Entrepreneurship is hard.
We're all kind of crazy, and maybe that makes us funny.
We don't have that safety net, that others have.
Right,
So
yeah. What, that safety net? More like just an open ocean with no bottom in it,
Which, what is exciting for us to go, like we were joking earlier, like you said, is there a stop time in this? I said, no, I'm self-employed. I can talk all day. And we
do whatever I
get
want.
our day, we obviously work at our business, and is a business, even comedy is a business. But we have that freedom and flexibility, and okay, I want to work at 10 o'clock at night, or I know what I have to get done today, but I don't have to do it 9 to 5, and that's when that draws many of us to it, and to be creative or to go, here's a problem. Problem is, I need more work. Solution is, what are some creative ways to get that, as opposed to going in the office, the same place? We don't want that consistency, I guess. I think we want it, but we want it differently.
Right. And I think a lot of us deep down, we prefer to not have a safety net, right? That's when you do your best work, is when there is no plan B. I burnt that boat and I torched that bridge. So, here we are.
There's also no ceiling on what you can make. I mean, there's a ceiling when you take a salary for a year.
There's no ceiling.
There's a ceiling. I mean, unless you do side gigs, but for us, it's like, okay. I used to have a joke. People would ask, say, oh, isn't that so scary? I said, yeah, it's scary to be a comedian, but at least I know I don't have any work next month. You all.
See, I like that. Oh, awesome. Well, Jan, we could probably keep going, but I know, we're not that busy. We got nowhere to be, but I did say we'd record for about 40 minutes. So here we are.
Perfect.
This has been wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for stopping by. I want to make sure that anybody out there listening, if they want to get more Jan in their life, or if they want to check out some of the books you've written, see you out and about, or maybe contract you to help them build the funny in their business, what are the best ways to do that?
Yeah, my website, because nobody can spell McInnis, It sounds like it's the beer, but it's not. It doesn't have a G. So go to theworklady.com is my website, theworklady.com. And I also have my book on there on how to write humor fast. It's called Finding the Funny Fast, how to create quick humor to connect with clients, coworkers, and crowds. So you can purchase that, or you can send me an email and purchase me. So my service.
All right, there you go. All right. Thank you so much, Jan. Again, this was such a pleasure, and best of luck to you the rest of this year and beyond.
Thanks.